Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And first, I just want to say, Ms. Barron, thank you so much for articulating so clearly some of my deep concerns about this legislation. I speak as someone who spent 30 years as a working journalist and is deeply concerned about the impact of this legislation on freedom of the press. But I'm even more concerned having heard that of the 400 cases that were investigated, none of them was found to be sufficiently substantive to be worthy of an investigation. And so I'm really concerned, and I wonder if the witnesses could speak to the issue of the chill that comes from that kind of mischief making. If 400 people filed criminal complaints and not one of them led to a criminal conviction, have we created a law that has the potential for abuse, not just against people who may have made false statements and have their freedom of speech impinged, but people who didn't make false statements and who are going to be chilled by the prospect of a criminal investigation of something that they say or publish?
Senator, perhaps to set something straight, we received those approximately 400 complaints. We looked, of course, into each single one of them. Many of them, there were groups, as I recall, perhaps of 100, 120 on the same kind of allegedly false statement. So I think we have something like 6 or 7 groupings of incident with respect to which, so for example, let's say the leader of a party, somebody said something that was perceived by some people as being a false statement about the leader of that party, we might get 50, 60 people filing a complaint with us.
And I presume some of them are exactly the same word for word spam.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. They will say, this, the Globe and Mail reported this, or La Presse reported that. We think this is a false statement and please investigate. And so that's why, though the numbers may appear pretty big, in fact, as I said, they were clustered around 6 or 7 main things.
But your answer gives me even more concern, because presumably the genesis of this legislation is to prevent some kind of evil troll campaign of people in the shadows spreading false rumors. The fact that you're saying that complaints were made against very legitimate and respected press organizations seems to me a weaponization and a mischievous misuse of criminal sanctions against a free working press.
As a former journalist, I realized that I was not articulate enough in my answer. So my point was not that the Globe and Mail was the La Presse was the object of a complaint, but that somebody would say, I saw in this or that newspaper that X said this about that leader, and I think that you should investigate X for having said what I consider to be a false statement. So it's in that context that most of these complaints will be filed with us.
Yeah, I still worry what onus that puts on the publisher or the reporter. I mean, if I report someone saying something that is demonstrably false, and I report it as a way to demonstrate the outrageous thing that this person has said, am I then captured by this legislation? I mean, if I report, let's say imagine that you have a president of an imaginary country who says publicly that one of his political opponents is lying about his place of birth, hypothetically. Could I be captured for factually reporting the falsehood spoken by a politician?
So you're talking not about the utterer of the false statement, but rather the media organization that in good faith reports it. Yeah. Certainly for the reasons that Madame Baron has expounded, I think that I personally as commissioner and any commissioner in my seat would, keeping in mind freedom of the press and freedom of expression, would be very hesitant before we launch an investigation against a media organization in the circumstances that you have described, because we do understand, of course, the immensely important role that media plays in terms of informing people and ensuring that the relevant information is received or is accessible for the electors. And so my focus would be, in a case like the one you described, would be, of course, to go or investigate the first maker of the false statement. And of course, if you talk about somebody in a foreign country, that raises all kinds of other issues, indeed.
All right. Thank you.
And if I may add, Senator, I am certainly not an expert in the law of defamation, and in particular how it applies to media organizations. Maybe Ms. Barron would be better placed if you are interested in speaking to that.
I certainly know, as somebody who, as I say, was a journalist and is acquainted with defamation law, that Canada is an extremely plaintiff-friendly defamation jurisdiction compared to the United States. It is far easier to launch a defamation action here and far easier to win. And I remain to be convinced that our existing defamation laws are not sufficient defense against false stories. But thanks. I've asked more than my share of questions.
Thank you.
Senator, may I make a brief comment?
Yes, absolutely, Ms. Barron.
Thank you very much, Senator, for your comments. I would just make a few brief observations. First, I was very pleased to hear that Monsieur Cote would defer to the importance of a free press and exercise his discretion accordingly if he were to receive a complaint. But I think that sort of that obfuscates the real issue, that we have a law that on its face is vague, so that even before a complaint would get to Monsieur Cote's office, somebody looking at it on its face and seeing the implications and the potentially draconian fines or jail time punishments would just, you know, err on the side of caution. And we actually, I take your point that venerable media organizations like La Presse are more sophisticated, and it's disconcerting that they or their writers should be a target of these complaints, but they do have legal teams and budgets. And in our litigation, we brought affidavits from several political writers, bloggers who, as the government knows, contribute very substantively to the online political discourse these days, who gave evidence that they already were planning on changing their communication strategy around the 2019 federal election in response to this law, and not wanting to be caught by it because an investigation would be crushing for them. They don't have a legal team, they don't have a budget. So the chilling effect applies even if an investigation is not commenced. Thank you very much.
Thank you.